So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. It's time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today. We'll take a look at some clips from the news, share a little bit of dialogue with those of you who are able to join us for the live portion. And if you happen to be listening anywhere else and you would like to join us for the live portion, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. That is at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat, and you can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta, as we get ready to jump off and see what's going on in the world. Being joined today by one feline in the room, and that is Granny Smith, sleeping in the chair behind me. Granny Smith, everybody. And I'll say hello to some of the people that have chimed in thus far. Naturally, I do read through as many comments as is reasonable for the benefit of those of you listening and not able to see. Helter is here today, as well as Dragon. And Jeff is here from East Tennessee. Tuck is here. He says, please like, share, and subscribe on both channels. Yes, please do, if you don't mind. Dan in Denver, who I assume must be in Denver, since it says so. Glad you could make it today. As we get ready to jump off, I did put another video up on the Coffee Talk channel today. I put one up yesterday talking about the VA, the Veterans Administration, and some of their outrageous spending practices. And I put up a video today talking about a little bit on the subject of how the behavior of the Democrat Party really left a lot of people no choice but to vote for Trump because of how awful they've been, how rude and nasty they've been to people. I see Fluke Man has joined us today. Glad you could make it. So please do check out those videos on Coffee Talk if you get the chance. Also, I just put up a short because I actually know something about this facility, and I'm going to start here. We'll skip the politics for a minute, and we'll get into the possibility of global pandemic, or maybe not. Plandemic. This is going to be a USA Today article, but I do know something about this, so I'm going to share it. You might have seen this in the media. If you haven't, you're in for a treat. You're in for a real treat. USA Today article. 43 monkeys escaped from the Alpha Genesis Research Facility in South Carolina. Yes, and that is actual video footage of the monkeys running through the woods. Okay, they actually escaped yesterday, or late yesterday evening, and they put out the alert this morning, finally, that they lost control of animals. They lost control of these animals. Has anyone seen it yet? Anyone seen the movie 12 Monkeys? Now, I can read through this article, but there's really no point. I can tell you, I already know who Alpha Genesis is, because this facility is actually located near where my mother-in-law used to live. It's Beaufort and the facility, South Carolina. And they have a couple of facilities, because they have one facility that is on an island, and they call monkey on 3,500 of those monkeys on the island. And what I found interesting is that they bounce back and forth between saying it's monkeys or sometimes they say it's primates. Now, if it's primates, they can't swim. If it's monkeys, they probably can. Most monkey species can swim. Primates cannot. Like a chimpanzee, it'd sink like a rock. A gorilla can't swim. You see my point? But monkeys usually can. And they say primates, but those are obviously not primates. Those are monkeys. The most identifiable mark is that they have tails. And Tuck says, yeah, great. Biohazard that can run, swim, climb, and breed. And he suggests that the audio is choppy. Anyone else having problems with audio? Anyone else having problems with audio? Hopefully we're not having any issues today. But that's the Alpha Genesis Laboratory in Yemassee, South Carolina, which is part of Beaufort County. And they lost them like late last night or something. And I guess, I don't know, tried to handle it themselves and panicked this morning and contacted the Yemassee Police Department. And Joe says it looks like they're near an Indian reservation. And Violet suggests that I sound good. Okay, Violet, thank you. But don't worry. Don't worry. Prime, however, says it's slightly choppy. All right, I guess some of you are having a little bit of an issue. Hopefully it'll clear up. Not Biolab. That's down the street, or down in Conyers, Georgia, Biolab. But Alpha Genesis says, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We didn't get around to doing any biological experiments on these monkeys yet. These monkeys are clean. Don't worry about it. And they suggest, and it says in the articles, people lock their doors and windows. However, I will tell you again, my mother-in-law used to live down there. Used to live in that area. So I already know from word of mouth from people that live down there, through a couple of relatives, and then to my wife's brother, and then to her, that they've locked down the community. They're on shelter in place orders. Okay, so it's a little more than what the media is telling you. Okay. Helter says they won't harm you if you don't come in contact with them. Thanks, CDC. Real big brain statement right there. Joe says Tom Hanks fled the country because of the Epstein list. Did he? But yeah, 43 of these things that we know of escaped. They assure us that they have not yet been experimented on, because they do all kinds of weird medical research there. Okay. And I will tell you also, I find it highly unlikely. I'm going to find an image. Okay. I want to show you Alpha Genesis, because I've seen this place. Again, my mother-in-law used to live out there. I've seen this facility. It looks like a prison. Okay. They do have an exterior section. All right. And I'm going to pull up a picture of what the exterior looks like. And I see a few more people jumping in here. Semper Fi has joined us, as well as John and Steve. And Joe says he made a post about how America's doomed and he's living in an undisclosed location. That's not why Hanks took off. He's on that list. And he's also another one of those sopping liberals that was attacking Trump, and now he's scared. Let me pull up this image for you. Here's the outdoor enclosure, for those of you who can see. And it's a redundancy of chain link fences. So it's not like someone can leave a gate open and then half their monkey population just wanders off. And they haven't been able to catch a single one yet. And they got traps out, and they've got helicopters with infrared scanners. I'm not kidding. And traps and all sorts of things going on, and they can't catch them. They can't catch them. Fluke Man, JJ is here. Let me catch up. And Country Living has joined us. Glad you could make it. Fluke Man says people on X saying they wish Margaret Robbie's baby son would die. Oh, wow. Die because it's a boy. Said it would be evil if her second child was female, to subject the poor girl of having an older brother. What the hell kind of crap is that? And Joe Doe says, wow, I'm looking at the facility on Google Earth. It's huge. Yeah. They didn't just walk out. You don't just leave a door open at a place like that. Okay. It looks like a prison. That is the outdoor exercise area in that picture, for those of you who were able to see. A redundancy of chain link fences, and then the building. And the building looks like a jail. It really does. And you can't get near the place. It's all swamps, which is also part of the reason why they can't catch them. It's all swamps out there in that part of town. Yemassee itself is a very poor town. It's poverty level town. You know what I mean? Joe believes they were released deliberately. Yeah. 12 monkeys, anybody? Violet says $6 million monkey, ultra fast, ultra strong. And Tuck says they may never catch them. There's a few odd colonies of monkeys in the U.S. They're on near me in Dana Beach, Florida. That's decades old. Yeah, they may not catch them, but they damn well better if they did something to those monkeys. And they're just telling us that they haven't experimented on them yet. Haven't experimented with them yet. And I just thought that was really interesting because, like I said, I've actually seen this building. I've been to Yamasee. I've been to Beaufort County, you know. And Nature Nerd says a fenced-in area defeats the purpose of exercise. Tell that to prison. Because that's what it is. They've got the interior and the exterior. But even if someone left the gate open, it's not that simple. It's not that simple. It's set up like a prison. And country suggests maybe released to start another pandemic. You'll never know. Yeah, I know. And then they find out they find out that, oh, the Alpha Genesis lied. That Alpha Genesis lied about there being about them having not been experimented on yet. The only other information they've really provided is that they're all females. They're all females. So unless a male also got out in that group, if they don't ever catch them, they'll eventually just die off. But that's a huge faux pas. that's a huge blunder. A huge blunder. As we get into the regular news here, a little bit of politics. But to me, that's major, because just because they said they didn't experiment on them doesn't mean that they didn't. Doesn't mean they didn't. And Joe says it looks like endless woods. Yeah, it's a swamp. There's swampland. Yamasee, like I said, Yamasee it's a poor town. It's a poverty level town. Then you've got miles and miles of swamps, some reserve area, and the old plantations that are now heirs' property for slave descendants in that area as well. There are several. There are several of those plots that are reparations land, basically for slave descendants that they've been living on it for generations. It's kind of like an Indian reservation. So yeah, I mean, there's God knows how many hundreds of miles, and then the nuclear power plants out there, not too some miles off, and then you've got miles of woodland and wetlands around the nuclear power plant because you're not allowed to be around there. So yeah, I mean they got nowhere. They've got plenty of free range to run around, basically. And Tuck says the colony in Dana Beach is in a mangrove marsh. So yeah, they're out there. It's not going to be easy to round them up. Let's just put it that way. Daily Beast article. Americans suddenly very interested in moving to another country. Really? I think this is kind of funny, this article. Cowards, run away, why don't you? Americans started furiously researching how to move to a different country as a looming second Trump presidency was confirmed this week. Google searches for, quote, move to Canada spiked 1,270% in the 24 hours after East Coast polls closed on Tuesday, while similar queries about moving to New Zealand jumped almost 2,000%, and those for Australia increased 820%. A Google official told the news agencies that late Wednesday on the East Coast, searches about emigrating to those countries were at an all-time high. While Google doesn't disclose raw numbers, data from New Zealand's immigration site showed around 25,000 new U.S. users visiting on November 7th, compared to 1,500 on the same day last year. Bye. You're that weak and wet and that much of a coward that you're going to run away. Okay, bye. And All People is here. He says late. So you're saying the heirs land was poisoned? No. Yeah, I was just reading. If you have not heard the story yet, All People, in Yamasee, which is Beaufort County in South Carolina, which is actually connected to, it's sandwiched between heirs property and the nuclear power station down there. The Alpha Genesis Biolab had a breakout and lost 43 monkeys last night. And they haven't caught one of them. They don't know where the hell they are. Well, they kind of know where they are because they're tracking them with infrared helicopters, infrared seeking helicopters. But it's all swamps and forest. They're not going to find anybody. They're not going to catch one of those monkeys. But don't worry, All People, because Alpha Genesis says they didn't get around to experimenting on those monkeys just yet. And Jane has joined us. Glad you could make it today. Fluke Man says Planet of the Apes. There's always a reason why they put these plants and research centers in poor areas, not on rich areas where people have enough money to sue you. Yeah, or have the wherewithal to block the construction of a facility like that in the first place. Like I said, Alpha Genesis, their main facility is actually located on an island where they have somewhere around 3,500 monkeys, 3,500, I think, on that facility. But that's on an island, you know. All People said bye-bye celebrities, liberals, and progressives. No kidding. And Jane says, I'm not going anywhere. Certainly so silly. Violet says, America, love it or leave it. I wish it was that simple. People are going to research it, but they're not going to go anywhere. They're not going to go anywhere. And you know what? Go your ass to Canada, to New Zealand, or Australia. Go there and see if it's any better. Okay? Those places are practically dystopian now. But they think they want that until they have to live that way. Joe says normal Americans don't care about abortion laws that aren't impacted by the president. That's a state issue. Normal people can't afford a house, gas, or groceries. Yeah. And it should be voted by location, I think. The more the federal government interferes with things, the more they screw it up. Leave that stuff alone. Leave it alone. Let the states decide. I agree with that. Country says, Canada, really? I might be wrong, but don't Canadians pay 50% income tax? I'm not sure, but I know the cost of living there is astronomical. Dragon says they don't realize it's not that easy to just up and leave and go to another country at the drop of a hat. Lots of paperwork to go through. Dragon, unless you're coming here, okay? Unless you're coming to America. I guess it doesn't occur to these people. There's a reason why the whole rest of the world is trying to cross our borders. I guess no one has thought of that. Although they better hurry up while they can. Because Trump has made it clear already, he's not backing off on that. And if states try to block him, he's going to run them over. All right. Helter says most of those people are not going to follow through. Of course, it's all talk. It's all bullshit. Joe says Alpha Genesis sounds like an evil organization. I know. It's Dr. Evil and the Alpha Genesis Project. That's what we'll do. We'll release 43 monkeys into the wild. We'll tell them it's safe. They'll believe it. Yeah, okay. Oh, we can't catch them. Fret. All People says was the goal of the Alpha Genesis lab to terrorize the heirs land and the swamp areas with outbreak monkeys. I don't know. They've been there for a while. I think the Alpha Genesis lab has been in Yamasee more than 20 years. I could be wrong, but I think it's been more than 20 years that Alpha Genesis has been out there. And I haven't heard about a problem with them before. But now all of a sudden, 43 monkeys escape a building that looks like a detention center. It looks like a jail. Seriously. JJ says New Zealand has very stringent immigration laws. I'll doubt they'll get in. And he also, Joe says the average house in Canada is now $2 million for a small house because they imported millions of people from India, Pakistan, China, and etc. Yeah, it's insane how expensive things are there. Jane says the poorest state in the U.S. is Mississippi, but the poor there are doing better than England and other countries. It costs $20 for a hamburger over there. Wake up. And in the U.K., you have to have a license to own a television. And you have to pay a charge for it. And they drive around with radar trucks. They used to drive around with radar trucks. Now that everybody's hooked up to cable, they probably don't have to do this anymore. If anyone's in the UK, they can emphasize on this for clarification. But yeah, they check to see whether or not, or they used to drive with radar trucks when you had cathode ray televisions when it was analog. But if you're watching TV and you're not paying the TV tax, you're in a lot of trouble. All Peoples is exactly these. I'm going to run away from the U.S. if such and such gets back into office. Whiners never ever fulfilled the promise to leave. I wish we could evict them based on their statements. Country says those people can't think past their nose. And Savage says he used to be an Arnold Schwarzenegger fan back in the 70s, pumping iron days. I mean, a lot of people liked him up until he started getting political. And Flukeman says, according to Trump Jr., Hamas has requested to ceasefire already. Coincidence much? A lot of things have changed. A lot of things are changing really fast. This is the most notable. Anyone looking to buy a house anytime soon? You may get a break. And this is a Reuters article that I'm going to pull up here next, because this happened almost immediately. They're dropping like flies. This goes to show you the dedication or the lack thereof in our current administrations. All right. Reuters article, Feds cut rates and note labor market is easing and solid economic growth. The Federal Reserve cut interest rates by 0.25 percentage point on Thursday as policymakers took note of a job market that has apparently generally eased while inflation continues to move towards the U.S. Central Bank's 2% target level. Economic activity has continued to expand at a solid pace, the central bank's rate-setting Federal Open Market Committee said at the end of the two-day policy meeting in which officials lowered the benchmark overnight interest rate to the 4.5-4.75% range as widely expected with a unanimous decision. They just did this. Trump gets elected, suddenly the Fed cuts the rate. And the chief executive officer of the Fed, when he announced the interest rate, also said if he's asked for his resignation by Trump, he's going to refuse. That's not in this article, but I know this. Okay. Flukeman says he thinks the TV trucks were lies. They only said to scare TV licensed Dodgers. Okay, thank you. Because Flukeman is out there. That's why I'm glad somebody's here from the UK. Tuck says I'm looking to buy an acre to build a shack on. And Joe says America has no driver at the leadership wheel for at minimum 6 months. Yeah, I know. So suddenly Trump's in office and the Fed wants to play ball. They've been beating the hell out of everybody for 4 years. Now they want to cut interest rates. What a coincidence. What a coincidence. What do you think, guys? What do you think, guys? Do you think they're trying to act like they're willing to play ball? Even more interesting. Even more interesting. Okay, talk about wanting to play ball. We're going to jump to New York. New York City, very blue, but all of a sudden, as of yesterday, they don't want to help illegal immigrants anymore. Have you seen this? Fox News article, New York City ends the taxpayer-funded prepaid debit card program for illegal immigrants. They set that thing up to run all the way until 2029, right? They had that sucker set up for years. New York City is ending a program that provided prepaid debit cards to migrant families living in Sanctuary City. In a statement obtained by Fox 5, Adams announced the end of the immediate response cards pilot program. Really? Seriously? Cruising says, I recommend you pay attention to the Alfie Oakes story in Florida. The feds invaded his property and he was on the short list for Trump's agriculture appointee. Really? That's interesting. I had not heard that. So the announcement goes out. The Fed cuts the interest rates. So that is that Trump won. Feds suddenly want to cut the interest rate. And now Adams suddenly wants to end the migrant free gift card program. Quote, through the immediate response cards pilot program, we were able to reduce food waste, redirect millions of dollars to our local economy. Oh, please. I hate when they try to pretend like giving away free money helps the economy. And provide more culturally relevant food to more than 2,600 migrant families in our care, Adams said. Culturally relevant food? Because, I mean, these people, we're supposed to believe they walked thousands of miles, crossed the border, begging for help, but the food wasn't good enough, so we had to give them gift cards. That's what they want us to believe. Back to the quote. As we move towards more competitive contracting for asylum seeker programs, we've chosen not to renew the emergency contract for the pilot program once the 3-year term concludes. When does the 3-year term conclude? And also, he says they want to move towards more competitive contracting. Isn't that what you should have done in the first place? Instead of having no bid contracts, which every one of them should be investigated. Every one of them. Jericho says they're all trying to save face. I saw the article somewhere they were ending food services for them as well. Flukeman says the reason I think it was a lie because the BBC refused to patent their technology, worried it could get copied, but isn't that the whole point of a patent? Yes, to prevent duplication. Jericho says services like SNAP or whatever it was for the migrants. Helter says it should have never existed in the first place. They can't expect people in America to not feel resentment over things like this when they are struggling. And that is, of course, giving migrants freebies. Joe says, I hear Thomas Massey being suggested for Agriculture Secretary and Farmer Joe Salatin as his advisor. JJ said, given that Trump restructured income tax so that the rest of the country wasn't subsidizing New York, I can see why the state's looking at budget cuts now that he's been reelected. And a couple more here. Tuck says culturally relevant should be utterly unimportant to a refugee. You're fleeing for your life, eat and move. Yeah, you came here. You don't give me the whole melting pot bullshit routine. You came here crying and begging, but it wasn't good enough for you. And our weak leadership panders to that, and it's unacceptable. They should have had bid contracts in the first place. I highly question all of those contracts that were no bid. They never should have been given free money. They're being given food. You don't want to eat it? Go your ass back where you came from. You were being given catered food. Catering services were providing you 3 meals a day and snacks. It wasn't good enough? Or it was just a hustle to get a card to get more cash. And that's my whole point right here. Dragon says, notice they cut the program after Trump won the popular vote. Exactly. Now all of a sudden everybody's walking things back. Joe thinks Eric Adams realizes how illegals destroyed New York City. He's trying to keep his job. He's doomed. I think Eric Adams is doomed. At the very least, he won't get reelected. At the very least, he's not going to be reelected. Eric Adams has had it. All the investigations that he's under, no way. Plus, there's a lot to be looked at in New York with the way that they've handled things the last couple of years. Tuck says the assistant for migrants was, among other things, just a clowered pivot move, and it worked. Joe says, think how crazy it would be for millions of Americans to move to foreign countries and insist we be allowed to vote in their elections and given all social services on the taxpayer dime. Nobody would accept it. No other country would put up with that kind of crap, especially from a Western nation. Flukeman says they'll just use the food vouchers on junk food, chocolate chips, McDonald's, and etc. No, I don't know about that. Probably selling the cards like people often sell the food stamp card. It's all a hustle. That's what these people do in these countries. A lot of them. Back to more walking back. I'm sure you've seen this in the news by now. Okay, and this is an Associated Press article coming up. Judge strikes down the Biden administration's program shielding immigrant spouses from deportation. Now all of a sudden it's illegal. Now all of a sudden we're not going to do it. A federal judge on Thursday struck down a Biden administration policy aimed to ease a path to citizenship for some undocumented immigrants who are married to U.S. citizens. The program, lauded as one of the biggest presidential actions to help immigrant families in years, allowed undocumented spouses and stepchildren of U.S. citizens to apply for a green card without first having to leave the country. The temporary relief from deportation brought a brief sense of security to some 500,000 immigrants estimated to benefit from the program before Texas-based U.S. District Judge J. Campbell Barker put it on hold in August, days after applicants filed their paperwork. Baker ruled Thursday that the Biden administration had overstepped its authority by implementing the program and had stretched the legal interpretation of relevant immigration law past the breaking point. And that was the Biden administration's initiative known as, quote, Keep Families Together. It's the Keep Families Together program from the Biden administration. Yeah, Keep Families Together. But now all of a sudden they want to walk that back too. It's funny how everybody jumps ship when it's suggested that new leadership is on its way in. Look at how that works. Country says if you're part of the alphabet soup community, you might be arrested or killed trying to get into some countries. That is correct. It's illegal in many countries unto death. There are many countries out there that will execute someone who falls into that category. They forfeit their lives. Joe says Massachusetts governor is vowing to break the law by helping harbor illegals. Oh, well, you know what, though? How about the whole rest of the country? Send them all there. Send them all to Massachusetts and build a wall around that. See how they like it. And I'm from Massachusetts. I was born there. It's not the Massachusetts I remember from childhood. Jericho says you should do that Dr. Evil gesture with the pinky every time you come across a large amount of money going missing or whatever. I know. $1 million. That's right. Justin says, keep families together, but don't tell your husband you voted for Special K. Special K, there you go. Who remembers Eddie Murphy's routine on Special K? He had a sister named Special K, like the cereal. The Keep Families Together program, courtesy of Jumpin' Joe Biden. Jumpin' Uncle Joe Biden. That's right. I don't work for you. You want to step outside? Man, you know what kills me about this guy? And that should have told everybody everything they needed to know about him right from the start. When he told that auto worker, I don't work for you, and got in his face and put his finger in his face and told him to step outside like he was going to fight the guy. Everything you needed to know about Biden, right there. I don't work for you. I don't care what you think. I'm going to do whatever I want. And all the bravado, always trying to act tough. Even if he was, and I'm not saying it's possible, because I seriously doubt it. Even if at one point in his life he ever was tough, dude's 80. he wasn't, or he's over 80, but he wasn't 80 quite yet when he did that. But as feeble as he is, he doesn't need to be trying to act like he's going to throw down with somebody. Joe says he's unburdened by what has been. Yeah. And Joe says, was that his early onset Alzheimer's showing? Well, I've talked about it before, and I'll throw it out there again. Some of you know what I'm going to say here. That Joe, if you look at interviews with people that have worked with Joe in the past, they'll tell you, or they would say in the interviews, he really wasn't right in the head ever since his aneurysm surgery, which was 1987, I think was the second one. He had 2 brain surgeries, and that ever since the brain surgery, not being able to remember things, looking confused, smelling people's hair, touching people inappropriately, all that started after the brain surgery. So they've really been covering for him since 1987. So, I mean, this is just progressive. This is just progressive. They've really been covering for him all that time. Country says the auto worker should have taken him up on it. It wouldn't have worked. Who is it? The Secret Service never would have allowed him to get anywhere near Biden. If he acted like he was going to raise a hand, he'd have gotten pulled to the ground and pummeled. So, yeah, real easy to talk tough. Really easy to talk tough. Meanwhile, in the White House, we're busy whitewashing history. And this is a story about, this is ASAM News talking about the National Archives. Who knew this was going on? It says employees of the National Archives have told the Wall Street Journal that they've been instructed to remove photos that put the United States in a negative light. Among the photos said to be removed are those taken by famed photographer Dorothea Lange of the incarceration of Japanese Americans during World War II. In a statement sent to ASAM News, the Japanese American Citizens League wrote that they express its concern the National Archive is pursuing a policy of erasing Japanese American and other histories from the public records. The National Archives, of all places, has a profound responsibility to the unadulterated preservation of the full history of the United States. The employees point towards the U.S. archivist Colleen Shogun. Art News reports. She joined the staff in May of last year and has reportedly ordered certain photographs removed of other topics ranging from treatment of Native Americans to civil rights, including images of Martin Luther King. A spokesperson for Shogun said she's trying to make the exhibitions more relatable to the general public while also being inclusive. You can't do both, sweetheart. And she was installed to clean it up and make it look nice and sweet by disguising our history, hiding certain aspects of it from the public, while at the same time pandering. You can't do both. But now that dynasty is ending, the employees are whistleblowing and saying, hey, this woman's been forcing us to remove things from the archive. Flukeman says fake marriages to U.S. citizens. The immigrants will be applying for divorce. To catch them, the investigating officers pose as wedding photographers and ask the happy couple where to send the photographs. Oh, no. Country suggests eating ice cream makes you think you're tough. Joe says crazy Joe Biden's trying to act like a tough guy. Actually, he's weak mentally and physically, and yet he threatens me for the second time with physical assault. No kidding. Incredible. Raccoon is here. Glad you could make it. Tuck suggests Biden has to be a plant. Even far left pundits have said he shouldn't be in any office because there are many superior candidates for those positions. And Gary Edwards has joined us. Glad you could make it. You missed the monkeys, Gary. You missed the monkeys, Gary Edwards. Buy your masks now. Get your masks and your rubber gloves while you can. The monkeys have escaped. Joe says Trump did better than ever with Latino, Native, Black, Jewish, and women voters than ever before. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. They did not come out for Harris like everyone expected. Joe says he's seeing countless liberals blaming Latino and Black men for Kamala's loss, suggesting their relatives will get deported as a result. And here's H12. Their relatives aren't going to get deported. But, I mean, fortunately, enough people saw through it. And Gary says, yikes, monkeys. Look the story up. It's 43 monkeys. I'll repeat it real quick. 43 monkeys escaped from a biotesting facility in Yamasee, South Carolina. And the reason I talked about it specifically is because I know the facility, because it's close to where some of my wife's relatives live. Her mother, my mother-in-law, her mother used to live out there. It's in Beaufort County, South Carolina. And the place looks like a prison. It looks like a prison, but somehow they lost 43 monkeys last night that escaped. but Alpha Genesis, which sounds like an evil organization. It sounds like something that's run by Lex Luthor. We are the Alpha Genesis operation. Release the monkeys. Assures everyone that they didn't get around to testing them yet or doing any experiments on these particular monkeys. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We'll find them. They'll never find those monkeys. I already know. Like I said, I know the area. It's all swampland and forest. There's nothing. Yamasee itself is a very poor district. It's a poor town. And on one side of it is heirs property, which is like reservation land for people who benefited from reparations back in the day. And then the other side is over down by where the nuclear power plant is, and there's nothing around there for miles. So yeah, they're really going to trudge through the swamps to catch monkeys. Nobody's going to do that. Country says the history story sounds like some of the schools that are trying to rewrite history. Yes, they are. Monkey, get out from under there. Stop pulling on cables. Come here. Come here. Sorry. My monkey, here he is. My monkey cat, and you see how feisty he is underneath the computer trying to pull cables out again. He knocked out the camera that one day, you might remember. But yeah, apparently the National Archive, with an installed chief operator, has been removing things from public view that are part of history. Whether it's good or bad, there are negative things in the history of every country, and you can't just ignore it. You don't have to repeat those mistakes, but knowing about that history is part of how you do keep from repeating that history. Fluke Man wants to know if there are crocs and snakes in the area where the monkeys escaped. There are, I know there's rattlesnakes out there. And I want to say there's alligators because I know I've seen some people barbecuing a couple out there. So I have not seen any, but that doesn't mean they're not there because, like I said, there is a lot of swampland. But there's definitely rattlers. But, I mean, they're monkeys. They're going to climb trees. They're going to climb trees. And Tuck says, that's the best monkey. You're the best monkey. Hi, buddy. You're the best. Cut that out. You're the you're the best monkey. Yes, you are. Joe says, do you have outdoor cats? I wish I could have indoor cats, but I'm allergic, but could maybe have some garage or barn Mausers. Yes. As you know, we take care of several. We're taking care of 18 right now. We have 5 inside and 13 outside. And if they're cared for properly, they will absolutely stick around outside, and they'll stay outside. They'll stay outside. We have several that have been out there for years, including Old Dad and Hobo, which some of you are very familiar with. They live on our back porch, and there is not a rodent or a snake within half a mile of this house. Gary says National Archive monkey censorship. Yep. And Tuck says rattlers tend to stay on the ground. And Flukeman says birds of prey. I'm sure there's hawks out there. I'm sure there's hawks out there. There's hawks all over the U.S. In other news, trouble in Amsterdam. Who has seen this article? Trouble in Amsterdam. And I believe this is a Fox News article coming up anytime now. It says Israel sends evacuation planes to Amsterdam after shocking attacks on Israeli soccer fans. Yeah, it's nuts out there. It says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Friday asked his counterpart in the Netherlands to provide more security for Israelis after fans of the Maccabi Tel Aviv FC soccer team were attacked in Amsterdam on Thursday by anti-Israel protesters. The violence erupted following a UEFA Europa League match between Ajax and Maccabi Tel Aviv. Israeli air carrier El Al is sending planes to Amsterdam on Shabbat to evacuate Israelis after the Israeli Defense Forces said it was standing down on a plane to immediately deploy a rescue mission to the city. Officials in the Netherlands say that 20 to 30 people have been injured in the attacks. The police have launched a major investigation into multiple violent incidences. So far, it is known that 5 people have been taken to the hospital and 62 individuals have been arrested, according to Amsterdam's police. And yeah, I mean, it's full-blown bedlam out there. Look at this. All those pro-Palestinian protesters out there raising hell. That's Amsterdam, Netherlands, right there. Does that make any sense to anybody? Flukeman says the weed country. Yeah, they don't seem so chill right now, do they? Tuck says I-95 passes through Yamasee. Maybe the monkeys could hitch a ride to Martha's Vineyard. Yeah, there you go. They can live at Obama's house. Joe says Netherlands imported Muslim DRs and engineers already bringing much needed diversity. Yeah, I mean, you can see the diversity right there. Doesn't that look fantastic? That's what the diversity looks like. That's what the diversity looks like. That's fantastic. This is what they needed in Amsterdam. Riot police fighting off pro-Palestinian protesters. And Tel Aviv or Netanyahu having to send planes on Shabbat, which is this evening, actually. Well, Shabbat is Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. But this is the climate out there. And Tuck says all the smoke is bad for Greta's climate. I know. Well, but she's pro-Palestine now. She doesn't do the climate stuff anymore, remember? She dropped that. That's old hat. That's old hat. The new money is in pro-Palestinian protesting for the time being, because that's gonna peter out here very quickly. I don't think that's going to last too much longer, at least not in the United States, because the weak leadership is on the way out. Gary says tolerance of evil is evil. Tolerance of evil is evil. But yeah, let's burn down Amsterdam. Keep it going, guys. Keep it going. Joe says Norway, Sweden, Belgium, France, UK, Ireland, Germany have all been added to the new Islamic caliphate. Poland and Hungary don't tolerate that shit. Yeah, for now. They will if they get further involved with the EU and the EU starts giving them more money. Country says maybe those leftists that want to leave the US should try heading there. I know, they can all be buddies. They can all be buddies. They can all hang out together and be best friends. While we're on that side of the world, we're going to jump. I think this is the UK. I don't know if anyone has heard this. This is a Telegraph article coming up. Okay. I think it's important because it reminds me of something. Telegraph article. Farmer took his own life in fear of inheritance tax raid. And that's the farmer right there. Took his own life. Okay. I got to be careful with wording. A farmer has erased himself in fear of the government's inheritance tax raid. John Charlesworth, 78, found at his 70-acre farm in Barnsley, Yorkshire, on Tuesday, 24 hours before the budget. His son, Jonathan, 46, said the father of two ended his life erased himself after being eaten away at the prospect of his family losing the £2 million estate, which has been owned by the family since 1957 because of the Chancellor's tax increase. He told the Telegraph that hearing in advance of the budget about Labour's plans to end the practice of letting all farmers pass on estates without inheritance tax was the final straw for Mr. Charlesworth, who had been caring for his sick wife. Now, I don't like it when people do that because it's really weak to just dispose of yourself that way. It's weakness. Okay? But it's also an important thing to showcase. And I'll show a story like this every time I can find one because it reminds me of my tax troubles with the IRS and what the tax attorney told me years ago. When at the very beginning of all the mess with the IRS. He was a former agent, and all of the people that worked in his office were former agents. And the reason that he left was because he had one too many clients that erased themselves from existence. And that there's no excuse for creating a system by which people are so afraid, in this case, of the IRS, that they're willing to self-eradicate to escape it. Think about the ramifications of that. You're part of a government entity that people are so terrified of, they would rather no longer exist than face it. Oh, wow. Tuck says he thought that Greta would be the next Erin Brockovich. Yeah, right. I'm sure there'll be a Greta Thunberg story out there. They'll make a movie and they'll make her look like Mother Mary. Joe says the EU's been heavily fining them for refusing refugees. JJ says maybe Greta will be the next Stormy Daniels. Oh, no. And Joe says, as a farmer, that makes me very upset and suggests they should end death inheritance tax. That shouldn't even be a thing. That shouldn't be a thing. Flukeman says immigrants from certain parts of the world cause trouble, yet the West refuses to learn from this. It's not the West, it's the Western leadership. It's our lawmakers who refuse to learn from it. And I think a lot of it's by design. They know exactly what the hell they're doing. Flukeman says immigrants, oh, I just read that. It says, like the same type of people constantly punch you in the face, but they never do anything about it. As I catch up here, Joe says leftist Keir Starmer, England leader, and Bill Gates already trying to save face with tweets about working with Trump, and he suggests the government should fear the people. Yeah, get your Guy Fawkes masks out. You're going to need them. But I'm talking about this story, although I never advocate the concept of self-erasure. The fact that people like this guy, so terrified of dealing with the tax department, that he sees that as his only option. It's horrible. It's horrible that they make people that afraid. They make people that afraid. I mean, really. Really. And Gary says taxation is an abstract concept. It forces bureaucratic and legal conflicts unnecessarily. And Flukeman says Disney's version of Greta Thunberg is non-white. Who would play Greta? Whoopi Goldberg, perhaps. Whoopi Goldberg. I wonder how much longer the View. You know what? I'm willing to bet that the day after Trump won, the View probably got more views than any time in their history because people wanted to watch them melt down. I'm willing to bet. Joe says he saw a meme that said the same people who want to take your guns invaded a home to murder a pet raccoon and a pet squirrel. Exactly. Exactly. And if they're willing to get a warrant and raid a home for a squirrel so that they can euthanize it to set an example, don't think they won't come for you. Don't think they won't come for you. Okay? Because that's pretty freaking extreme. And then the excuse, as you recall, from the Department of Conservation and Environment, New York Department of Conservation and Environment, is that the right one? They claimed that they did it to make sure it didn't have rabies. And so they wanted to kill it and test it. Sure. You knew that animal didn't have rabies. Be serious. Jericho says if it's one thing they realize, they bleed and put on their pants one leg at a time, just like us. No, you know what they do? They have their pants suspended by 2 bungee cords on the posts on their bed, and they jump into them like this with both feet down. Joe says he heard several hundred people say they're going to watch The View for the first time to watch them melt down. Exactly. I bet you they had historic numbers on Wednesday. I'm willing to bet if you look at the whole history of the show, they had historic numbers on Wednesday. I'll bet a nickel. Gary says the government should only suggest a tax amount. What people pay into the system should be voluntary and able to be targeted to specific areas chosen by the taxpayer. And Gary, I will remind you, I will remind everyone. Uh-oh, I'm sorry, monkey. What are you doing right there? I'll remind everyone. Oh, it's not in there. Here it is. That God only wanted 10%. God only wanted 10%. God wanted 10%. And when you factor not just income tax, property tax, and the taxes you pay for goods and services, the tax you pay to buy things and the tax you pay to sell things, taxes on utilities, tax on everything, probably more than half of your income goes to taxes. And Joe says, if they were willing to imprison and murder Trump, imagine what they'll do to the average Joe. Yeah, and that's something to consider. What makes you so exempt? And that's also why a lot of people identified with him after all of the lawsuits and everything else. And Jane says, remember 10 years ago an Ohio man let loose his pet tigers and lions out because he let the tiger kill him and wanted to hurt his neighbors. Why not take this man's pets? I don't know. Gary says taxation should reflect the taxpayer's confidence in government efficiency and fairness. And it isn't. It isn't fair. It isn't fair. And if people had that option with how they feel about government, they wouldn't pay it at all. But they have no choice because it's extortion. They'll take it from you no matter what. They will take it from you no matter what. And hey, monkey, I'll show you monkey one last time. Come here, my friend. Oh, come here, my friend. Monkey, everybody, there he is. Meow. Hi, buddy. Because we're going to go ahead and start signing off again. You were listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube on Coffee Talk and Prep University. please join us there. Please check out, in the last couple of days, I've put up a couple of additional videos on Coffee Talk, if you wouldn't mind. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. So thank you, everybody who was able to join us here today. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation. And we will catch you again.